If you're changing your bonus structure every single year, it's because your business is failing and you're trying to create ways to hide that or disguise that. Or it's just because you're really bad leadership and you don't know how to create consistency. Could be a multitude of things, but in a general sense, you don't want to see big things like that changing every year. Ask how long the current structure's been in place. Ask what happened last year, stay up to date. But, if things are changing a lot like that, then I'm sure you're at a company where you have a lot more worries than this, and there's some more red flags you should be paying attention to. Today we get to talk about money.
I love money.
In the form of bonuses.
Love bonuses. Never gotten one. Still love them.
I don't know if you can love something you've never gotten.
You definitely can.
All right. Well, since you love them so much, I suppose we can spend the next 30 minutes to 40 minutes talking about them.
Perfect.
Okay, so bonuses, basically these are one-time payouts. There's a lot of different kinds of them. So I guess we could just kick it off with all of the different formats and maybe methods that you get bonuses. So most classic bonus that you hear about all the time is a performance bonus. It's just the one-time payout for achieving specific goals. These are typically structured as a fixed amount or a percentage of your salary. So at a lot of companies I've worked for, it's always been around like up to 10% of your annual salary can be the bonus. So if your salary is 100K, you can expect anywhere from 0 to 10K as a bonus. A lot of these are typically more discretionary to the company, right? So the way you get it isn't necessarily just exclusively based on your own performance, because a bonus is something extra. It's something that you're not necessarily gonna get no matter what. The company has to be doing well. Everybody has to be doing well. So a lot of components to think about. Now, in similar fashion, then you start getting into like profit sharing bonuses. These are bonuses where it's directly tied to the company's profitability. It's usually just a percentage of profits that gets distributed amongst employees. I want to say they're typically annual, and it's all based on financial results. So I think some people see this. I've seen this before where like companies will give a couple, or they'll, like, for example, NVIDIA, which is this tech company that blew up because of AI and chips and so forth. Anyways, they had, their stock increased and made a ton of millionaires overnight. But outside of that, they also just had a lot of bonuses paid out because they did so well.
It's nice.
Now there are sign-on bonuses. So these are bonuses you get when you are a new hire. So you can either A, negotiate it, or B, they offer it. It's usually just a part of like the benefits package you negotiate in the beginning. I've seen it anywhere up to like 50K.
I thought they did it for basketball too, and like sports.
Yeah, I mean, that's a little different because I think it is still a job, yes, but sign-on bonuses in those terms are a little bit more like inflated just due to the fact that it's professional sports. I'm sure they do, though. They do it. I would say a lot of times you see it for like high-level roles, so C-suite, things like that. When you want really good talent, a sign-on bonus is a great way to attract people because it's basically getting paid like your proper performance bonus or even more at the start of a contract with a company. So it's a great way to kick off a relationship because that's a lot of extra cash.
Right.
I have seen, so then there are retention bonuses. This is basically just incentive to keep employees during critical periods. Sometimes it's a lump sum, sometimes it's phased payments. They're typical or when you see acquisitions or mergers. So when two companies combine, they want to make sure all the strong talent stays. So they'll probably, provide some type of financial incentive. Right. We've talked about this before, but spot bonuses are like at any point in time at a manager's discretion or at any leader's discretion. They could just be like, give this person $500. Typically they're smaller and it's really more of a spontaneous thing. Then, like you see in all the movies, is the holiday or year-end bonus. Really focused on just giving during the holiday season. It's a measure of goodwill. Typically, it's the same as like a performance bonus where it's a flat amount or a percentage of salary. A lot of the times it's based on tenure, and they can provide equal bonuses for all if it's holiday related. One of my favorite times of the year is corporate Christmas. You don't know about this yet, but corporate Christmas is when all of the vendors and the partners and everybody you work with, everybody's just sending everyone gifts at the company's expenses. So I have gotten wine, I've gotten full like tracksuits, I've gotten hoodies, I've gotten food and snacks, like you name it, companies do it. Holidays are a great time to give gifts to clients, to coworkers and so forth. So holiday bonuses are great. Mm-hmm. Now, a bonus, I don't know if we talked about this, but referral bonuses are a great way to get extra cash while you're already at a company. So it's basically just a reward for referring new talent to the company. And a lot of time you see that referrals in business are just the best way to go. Mm-hmm. Right? Like if I need someone who's really good at stocking shelves, I'm going to ask Little T. Right. And Little T is going to tell me 5 people that are really good at stocking shelves because you've seen them, right? Yeah. And then if you refer them to me and I hire them, you get $1,000.
I could do that right now.
Right. Exactly. It's good stuff. So.
Well, are you going to pay me though?
I mean, I don't really need anyone to stock the shelves of this podcast, but perhaps one day we'll have a product and shelves will get stocked.
Maybe in the near future, bro. Come on.
All right. Maybe in the near future we'll manifest a collab with Dr. Scholl's and someone will stock my shelves. Right. Okay. And then of course you just have discretionary bonuses. So not necessarily specific to any metrics, not tied to any specific performance. It's really just at pure will of the employer. Mm-hmm. It can be any amount and it can be given really at any time just based on management decisions. So bonuses, unlike raises and promotions, they're a lot less formal and they're also not guaranteed, right? So you don't necessarily have the same process as a raise because maybe you really earned a raise and promotion. That's very true. And maybe you worked really, really hard to get a bonus. But if your company has no money, they can't pay you.
Right.
And so as a process of like what to expect, I would say typically the first thing you need to do is you need to learn what your bonus structure is. Ask HR, ask your manager, what type of bonuses are offered? How are they determined? Who determines them? When are they determined? Questions like that. Learn about the structure. Sometimes companies have it documented, sometimes they don't. Mm-hmm. It's really important to know though, because the more you know about how you're compensated, the better you can negotiate your full compensation package, including benefits, raises, things like that. Once you get a general sense of the structure, then you need to really clarify like what they get tied to. Mm-hmm. Is it tied to my personal performance? Is it tied to team results? Typically, it's going to be a mix of both company and personal, all of these things. But at the end of the day, see if you can get some concrete answers there. And then you want to set goals early with your manager. Basically, all the stuff you want to do for a raise, you want to do here. You want to track your wins. You want to understand the timeline. And of course, you want to speak up during your reviews. You want to make sure you're advocating yourself. You want to make sure you're building up kind of your perception in the workplace. And then the idea is you just know what you're going to take home. Because one fun fact is that bonuses are taxed differently. They are not technically different, but at the time of payout, they are taxed differently. Now, eventually, all of that gets added into your just total income for the year. But when you're paid out a bonus, it's paid as like incremental on top of what you're doing. So it's at a higher tax rate. So you may see slightly less initially. But bonuses themselves, they're great.
Right.
You wouldn't know, though.
No.
Okay. There's not too much. Honestly, this might be a quick episode, but moving on to boss POV. Because, like I said, there's only a handful of bonuses here. Now, me personally, I have given many bonuses. I was fortunate enough where when I was in a role where I had to determine if people received bonuses or not, my department's performance was always the best, and therefore I always got to pay out bonuses, no question. So I haven't had too many hard decisions there. Now, I have learned, though, that working in a place where you consistently perform and you consistently deliver can give people like a expectation, let's say, that they will always get paid out a bonus. And bonuses aren't guaranteed. So when I remember, not my department, but let's say other departments weren't doing well, they wouldn't get paid out bonuses, and people were in uproar.
I bet.
You know, because they were so used to receiving it every year, right? Like the full 10%, the whole enchilada. And then all of a sudden you're getting 2%, you're getting 5%, you're not getting the full amount, or you're not getting anything at all. Who knows, right? I think bonuses are a really fun way to build and or break team morale dependent on how you handle them. I think it's another thing with how transparent teams are, right? Mm-hmm. I remember one year, a friend of mine at a company, they just didn't pay bonuses at all for this guy. And that happens. Like sometimes you have bad years. Or for example, during COVID, when we were talking about, you know, you might get a pay decrease. Like you might have some of these things happen. But it's better to have a job and make some money than to have, you know, nothing at all. Mm-hmm. And so being a manager in those positions, it's not fun. Very rarely is it like a manager gets to say yes, no to my team's bonuses. It usually is leadership tells them this is how much budget you have to determine bonuses. And then they can either distribute it as a you get 10%, you get 0%, or maybe they do everybody gets 3%, or you get 4%. Or there's all these different math and all these different numbers that you can put into it. But a lot of the time it's extremely discretionary. Right? And then it also depends on how generous they are. I have heard of some companies where they put the manager's bonus amount in the pot. So the manager determines how much money they make and how much all of their employees get.
Off.
I know. It's... I remember seeing a manager to pay out her whole bonus and then not pay out her team's bonuses. It happens. Listen.
Yo.
It happens. Here's the thing. This is why I say it's so important to know how it's managed, right? And like who makes these decisions? How are these decisions made? I don't think that policy was necessarily a good one. I don't think that the way the company that friend of mine was at handled it was smart, by no means. Right. But I do remember hearing that story of just, I got a, total lump sum and I was told that I needed to distribute this amongst my team, including myself.
So I kept all of it.
Right. Now, obviously, as a manager, there's some downsides to that, because if you do that, your whole team's going to hate you. So you can't, take all of it. But that is something to factor in. I also think, it really does depend on what level you're at and the size of the company. Because you're either going to have more or less control in one of these situations. Oftentimes, you don't have very much control. But it all depends on how much you put on paper, I remember there was one point in time in my career, I had literally no idea how I was paid, honestly. Like on top of my base compensation, I had no idea how my bonus was calculated. I'm pretty sure my I'm not going to sit here and lie and say good boss, but my old boss would quite literally just pull a number out of his ass. And that's how it felt. It was incredibly just so discretionary. It's so much wiggle room. I had no idea how things were getting paid. Eventually, because I'm smart enough and I think I saw the trends a little bit, I could denote these fictitious numbers that were getting pulled out of nowhere to some degree. But I also remember a period where one time I had a boss try to hold back on paying my bonus. And I sat there and I was like, all right, I'm going to stop working until you figure this out and tell me exactly how I'm compensated, because I'm not doing this.
Right.
That check was in my account the next week. So, moral of the story is know how you're paid. Don't be like me and leave a lot of gray space. And also, I think from a boss POV, right? You look at some of these amazing women in leadership, like Spanx, the founder of Spanx, right? When she sold Spanx, they sold for like over $1 billion. I think it was like 1.2 bill, right?
Dang.
And she gave every single employee in her company 2 first-class tickets to anywhere they wanted in the world and a $10K bonus.
That's nice.
Right? That's not necessarily a spot bonus. That's not necessarily performance. That is just like, we sold the company and I'm going to profit share with all of you because I just made $1 billion, right?
Yeah.
Or I'm sure you heard about the Swifties. Right? Why does everybody love Taylor so much? Well, Taylor, when she was running the Eras tour and groundbreaking results, like $1 billion tour, right?
She paid out everybody that worked.
She paid everybody out, what, like 100K or something like that?
Yeah.
Because she was making that much money, right? And so that's how it should be done.
Mm-hmm.
That's what good bosses do. I never got to the point where I could pay out people crazy amounts of money because I didn't make that much money, like Swiftie and her billions yet.
Right. One day. But there's definitely a lot of great ways to, I don't know, treat your employees. Right.
Everybody loves money, right?
Yes.
Imagine if Taylor Swift threw a pizza party.
Ouch.
Right? Yeah. But maybe it could be like a pizza party with like gold coins as the pepperonis.
No, you didn't.
No, I'm kidding. That's my idea. I'm stealing that. That's for me.
Right.
Lil T, when the pod blows up, I'm going to buy, like, what is it? If you go above 24 karat gold, it becomes malleable. So maybe like I'll get like 40 karat gold and I'll just throw that shit on a pizza and I'll just get little coins.
Right.
That'll be your bonus. You can sell it on the black market.
I would rather babysit Hotami for a year.
That's not even a... Okay, well...
That's considered a bonus to me.
Wow, and I pay you to do it, too. That's nuts.
I mean, I'm not going to stop you.
True that. Another lesson, don't stop people from giving you money. Take everything.
Right.
Especially when you're young, act like you're poor no matter what. That was
on
a
the
big
verge
thing,
of homelessness.
Yeah, you don't want anyone to know. Even if you have money, you want nobody to know you have money because they will treat you differently, especially in the workplace. Like, I have seen people who come from really nice backgrounds and they'll be, let's say, overlooked for raises or for bonuses because the company knows they come from money. So they're like, you don't need it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Perception's everything.
Right.
Okay. Mentality check. So I tried to find ones that were a little different than raises and promotions, but honestly, they're all kind of the same because everybody has the wrong ideas when it comes to money.
Mm-hmm.
But one misconception I see a lot is if it's in my offer letter or if it's in my compensation package, like in your contract, I'm guaranteed a bonus. And this is just super wrong. I've said it about 100 times thus far in this pod, but a bonus is not guaranteed. It is as the word itself.
Right.
It is more on top. The big key idea here is, yes, you did negotiate it. Yes, it is on paper, but it is still discretionary. Unless it's a sign-on bonus, or maybe I've heard of this. I've never seen it, but some companies will guarantee some form of a bonus, like maybe at a bare minimum, let's say out of 10%, you're guaranteed 2% or something like that. I've seen that stuff indirectly or heard about it. I've never had it happen to me. But at the end of the day, it's based on performance, company results, or even your manager's approval sometimes. So the right way to think about it are bonuses are often a maybe, not a promise, even if you're doing your job well, and even if the companies are doing well. I've seen it so many times where companies perform well and they do not share with their employees. They do not pay out bonuses, and employees are sitting there, oh, they just laid off 20K people, but they're $100 million up year over year. You see that happen.
Yeah, you
hate to see it. Right. So how do we take action here? Well, one, clarify the terms of your bonus and know what it's tied to. Is it your goals? Is it the company's success? Is it both? Is it other things, right?
Right.
Sometimes I've seen companies where bonuses are only given to the people that do extra work. So the people who go above and beyond and do all these extra things, maybe they're the only ones getting them. So something to remember, right? Ask about average payouts from previous years. You know, you can ask maybe colleagues, HR, whoever it is, how was it handled before? Because maybe the company can't guarantee anything for this year, but how were they doing it before, right? And then throughout the year, as we always say, paper trail, all right? Document and promote your achievements.
Right.
Make sure you're visible internally. 'Cause if no one's looking at you, I can tell you what, no one's fighting to give you a bonus.
Right.
Right. And at the end of the day, that's your money.
Right.
Right. So, bonuses are not guaranteed. And number 2, misconception is that bonuses reflect how much the company values me. Now, I know that some companies use bonuses to highlight people, right? To spotlight people, to celebrate certain teams and certain performances and things like that. But it's not necessarily a direct relationship to how much they value you, right? Because bonuses are influenced by company profits, departmental budgets, leadership decisions. Sometimes, and most of the time I'd say, there's so much more that's out of your control than what's in your control that you can't assume these decisions are made exclusively with you in mind.
Right.
Now, I think because bonuses are done more frequently, that is why people have this misconception where it's like, if they liked me and they liked everything I was doing, they would have given me a bonus. Why didn't they give me a bonus? And you get in this habit because every year you're assessed or your team's assessed or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you know, money's money, and companies are going to keep as much of their own money as they can. And so if there's limited budgets, there's limited things you can do here.
Right.
So
That makes
you
me
might be doing
sad.
amazing. Yeah, it's real sad. You might. This is maybe why Stacy was crying. Is she didn't get her bonus?
Honestly, I'd cry if I was Stacy too. if
Ain't
this
got
were
nothing to do with
happen
her
me.
grandma.
Right. Stacy's a fake. Y'all. She crying about her bonus that isn't getting paid out.
Facts. Well, and you know, some people, I think they plan that they're like, they think bonuses are guaranteed. So they make life decisions with their bonuses in mind. Like, I've heard of people who, like, I've had employees who have like bought a new car because they were convinced they thought they were definitely going to get, they were so used to getting paid the bonus. They were like, yeah, I'm going to get paid my bonus. So they go buy this
and
car.
they did get
they're
paid
like-
their bonus.
They did not get paid their bonus. And they're like, oh shit. I have a car now. Right?
Yo, what kind of impulse decision is that?
It's not even impulse, you know? This is where I was saying, like,
Well, it's not very smart.
totally. But when you work at a company that has paid your bonus for 5 years straight, every single year, what happens is people get comfortable. And you need to not be comfortable. Don't be comfortable in a corporate setting.
What gave you that idea to go buy a car?
Yeah,
Right.
I don't know. I don't
I mean,
even
no
think.
hate,
It was
but-
something. Maybe it was like they were building a fence or something. Who knows? It was just like some big type purchase thing. And
Okay,
it
but
was
like
just-
it can always wait until you for surely know.
it could.
I feel like that's a bad
But
idea.
not most people think like that. So back
Okay,
to
well,
the
think like that.
misconception.
Use your brain, guys. You can't always just expect money to come flowing
No.
in.
Here's the thing. It's not even use your brain. It's just remember bonuses are not guaranteed. So operate in your life as if your bonus doesn't exist and you'll be fine.
Right.
Right? Then it's a pleasant surprise like everybody else. But okay, so back to the point on thinking your bonus is tied to your worth. You might be doing amazing work, but if the business is struggling, bonuses are going to shrink and disappear altogether. It has nothing to do with you. So the right way to think about a bonus is a reflection of myself and the company's performance.
Right.
And it isn't directly associated with just how a company values me. How do we take actions here? Well, don't let a small or missing bonus shake your confidence. It's not some secret meeting. It's not some secret firing. It's probably just some bad leadership, mismanaging money. Stay aware of how your company and your overall business and department is performing. If you don't know how your company's doing, like there's typically in most corporations, there are state of the business meetings or town halls or any of those things where leadership shares results of how the company's doing, big moves coming and all of this stuff. Go to those. Know what's happening, right?
Right.
And if the business is booming and your bonus is a little off, then maybe that's a red flag you need to start digging into the business.
Right.
Which brings me to our next section. Red flags.
Need a red flag to start
yeah,
waving.
Red flag. Well, the first two red flags that I wrote out here, they're more like dark orange flags.
Okay.
Because every company does this to some degree. So just know what you're getting into, right? But basically, having vague bonus language in your offer letters or in your agreements, maybe it says something like up to X% with no clear methodology.
Right.
This is a red flag mainly because keeping it so vague gives a company so much wiggle room that at any point they could pay 0, they could pay 10%. Like having vague language in contracts is part of the strategy behind contracts, literally, because vague language can allow you to interpret things in different ways. And there's a reason why judges exist. There's a reason why a whole court system exists when it comes to these things, because there are different ways to interpret the exact same words.
Right.
So pay very close attention to how that language is written out. And I think as a way to help understand this maybe a little bit better or work through this orange red flag here is you could just ask how payouts have been historically. You can understand what conditions full bonuses are actually paid under, and you could just get a little bit more information.
What if they don't tell you? What if
red flag?
Actually, I don't remember.
I don't remember is crazy. That's a very good gaslight statement, because they do remember. Not only do they remember, it's documented somewhere in that business.
I mean, like, obviously I'm not the
I know. I'm saying, so if they
CEO.
respond like that. Yeah, but
Right.
even the CEO, like anybody who's HR managers even, like if they were there, unless they weren't there the year before. Because if they weren't there the year before, it's not on them to know what happened the year before. But if they were there the year before and they hit you with some nonsensical, I don't know, or I think it changed, or let me get back to you, and then they never get back to you, red flag.
Toxic. Okay.
Toxic. Okay. A big one, and I say this is an orange flag because I honestly, every company, at least that I've had in my purview and in my experience, this is how it is. So it's not necessarily a red flag, but it's something you need to pay attention to, which is you have to be employed at the time of payout. Which basically, if you earn the whole bonus, but you quit the day before the check hits your account, they can reverse it.
What does that mean? Like they don't have to give it to you?
Correct.
Yo.
Yeah. and as someone who assisted a friend leaving a company, right? I helped one of my friends do this. And I remember they were leaving. They wanted to quit really bad. And I was on the sidelines saying, "Nope, you are not quitting until the money is in your account."
Right.
Because then I went and I looked at payroll, because payroll systems are how these things get paid out, is you basically go into this technology, you type in how much money each person's getting, and then you click some buttons and you basically start the process of the tech and the bank account sending the money, right?
Right.
When I was looking at it, it looked like you could quite literally cancel the payment literally right up until the money is transferred from the accounts. And it takes a week to process.
Right.
Okay. So here's the thing. If you want to quit your job, I get it. Do not do it if you're close to your bonus. Stick until the end of a bonus season and get paid out your bonus because you earn that money and you worked for it.
Uh-huh.
And just check your terms, okay?
But they can only do that with bonuses, right?
Right.
Not like your actual, like, paycheck.
Right. They can't withhold your paycheck if you work. That'd be breaking the law.
Right. Well.
But a bonus, like I said, fully discretionary, fully up to a company. So if you unknowingly quit your job the week they're paying out bonuses, thinking that on Friday that check's going to hit your account, I'm sure there are probably millions of people who have made this mistake.
Yo, that's sad. I wouldn't have. I would have never known.
Exactly. So this is where we say, check your contracts.
Right.
All right. Read your throw them in ChatGPT and say, ChatGPT, what are these key things I need to know? Okay.
Right.
Because if you have to be employed at time of payout, and remember, I say this is like an orange flag in the sense of I have not seen a company that does otherwise.
I mean, but that's you quitting. So you
you quit the business. Why would they give you a bonus?
Right. But that's still kind of messed up.
It's logical, but boy, oh boy, do a lot of people make this mistake. Like I have had, and keep in mind, this may not even be in your contract. This is most likely in your employee handbook.
Oof.
Sometimes it can be in your contract. Most times it's your employee handbook. And I would say your employee handbook changes every year. I remember one time I had a coworker quit, and 2 weeks after she quit, bonuses were paid out. And she was messaging me, asking me to send her the handbook because she was trying to figure out if she quit too soon and isn't going to get paid out her bonus. And that was the exact case. She did not get paid out her bonus.
Right. Well,
so now
that's messed up.
Yeah. So watch your back. This is why we're doing this podcast, Lil T, so that people know what little things to look out for and they don't make dumb little mistakes, right? Because that's your money. Get your bag.
We need a bag.
Another red flag. Bonuses are discretionary with no defined criteria. This is important. All bonuses are discretionary. That's not the red flag. What is the red flag is when there is zero criteria defined. Now, not every company has perfect definitions. Of course not. It's a bonus. It's very, like I said, it's very discretionary.
Right.
But if they don't share with you any type of rubric or any type of, let's say, standard methodology, all it means is it's going to be completely arbitrary and most likely very political. Now, one red flag, normal, couple red flags, it happens. When you start having a lot of these red flags, there's a systemic issue in the business.
And so that's when you put your 2 weeks in.
Unless you're getting your bonus paid in 2 weeks.
Right.
Then you wait.
Right. Then you wait.
Because the minute you quit, they could rescind the bonus.
Dude, that's actually wild.
You have to wait.
What if, like, maybe you even, like, give them the idea that you're going to be quitting?
Poker face, y'all.
Right. Okay.
Your next move, never let them know your next move. All right?
Not to be mysterious.
Oh, you want to be mysterious. Let me tell you what. Mysterious is the only thing protecting you. Okay? Putting all of your cards on the table is quite literally asking to get screwed over.
Right.
Right? Because when you put all your cards on the table, you're assuming the person that you're putting the cards on the table for has the same intentions and has the same values as you do. But in corporate America, it is cutthroat. In corporate in general, it can be cutthroat. But outside of that, it's also, this is a money game, right? Like a big for-profit company that's on the public market, like, I don't know, let's see if it's a public company, Ford, right? Ford's number one job is stockholder equity, which is basically every single one of the people who bought stock in Ford, that's their boss, and their duty is to make their stock as high as possible. Do you know how you make stocks high? Is you make bold choices that maybe cost money, but definitely make more money, right? You become a market leader, you saturate the industry. And in order to do that, you have to be a little cutthroat. So yeah, be mysterious. Don't give energy like, I'm gonna quit soon. I'm thinking about quitting everyone's thinking about quitting, okay? Every day, right. Even if you love your job, there are days where you think about quitting. But you don't want to walk into your manager's office and be like, hey, manager guy, feeling really blue today, thinking about quitting. Right. Sup with you. Don't do that.
But even if you do that and end up not quitting, do you think it'd affect that bonus that you could
yeah, definitely. Getting? Absolutely. Okay. Fun fact, as going back to a little quick boss POV real quick, but one time I had an employee who flat out told me like she just didn't like the job. Right? And so I was like, okay, you have other passions. I feel you. Advertising isn't for everyone. That's fine. But I absolutely deprioritized her at that point. Why would I fight to pay someone who's probably going to leave me, right? Right. Why would I fight to keep them happy? So back to my statement here. You do need to talk to your manager. You need to be very open with your manager in terms of your career goals, in terms of what you want, but your feelings and the person you hate in the cubicle next to you and shit like that, you keep that to your friends, to your dog, okay? Maybe you send it in to me.
Right.
All right.
Spill it to us.
Spill it to us. But don't go into your manager's office saying,
I'm going to quit.
Feeling cute, might quit.
Actually, guys, I'm going to get my 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay, another red flag is when it's company performance based only. So if your bonus is tied only to the company profit or revenue goals, you can do great work, but you're still going to get nothing. And depending on how large a company is, it can really be impactful, right? Like a lot of times when companies make this play, the idea is to make people care more about other departments and other teams and try to collaborate and try to do all this stuff. But it doesn't really work out like that always in totality. Right. So make sure that you want some representation of your individual performance, your department's performance. You don't want it to just be company profits, because at that point, you're just a stockholder, right? Because when company profits are high, then dividends, which is what you make off stocks, is going to be higher payouts. Okay, another red flag. No timeline for payouts. Now, this goes similar to when they don't have any methodology, there's no transparency and stuff, but this is more specific to no timeouts, which means basically they don't know if they can pay you or not. That's what that means. Right. It means there's vague timelines, so they might make you wait 6 months, 8 months post-review. I know of a company that paid out bonuses 7 months into the next year for the previous year.
Right.
Let's explain why all of that's a red flag. Well, number one, if you are so poor at managing your business and more importantly, your financials, that you need quite literally a full additional year to determine how you did the previous year, yikes. Your leadership's questionable. That's a red flag for the business because the way they're behaving in this instance is not going to change. And most likely it's going to trickle down into every other aspect of the company, right?
Right.
So keep that in mind. Another one is bonuses are mostly in stock or equity only. Here's the thing. Equity in a business is awesome. If they plan to sell, right? You see these things like where Alex Earl invested in Poppy and then Poppy sold for like $1 billion to Pepsi, right? Even if she got 2% of equity in Poppy from doing all these videos, she just got paid out a handful of $1 million. But equity is also not guaranteed. It could take years to get to that point. I don't know, in Alex Earl's case, I'm sure she didn't know how soon Poppy was to selling. But a lot of times you want to ask these, big companies aren't trying to sell. So equity can either mean you're getting some, I don't know, let's say profit sharing. There's specific terms for this that we'll probably break down in another episode because it's a whole other thing. But long story short is, a lot of companies also require years to vest your equity or stocks. So, for example, I know so many people at like an Amazon or a Google, when they sign their contract, it usually is 3 to 5 to 7 years before all of their stock is vested. Mm-hmm. What that means is if you leave the company before you're vested, you lose all that money. It's not yours.
Right.
It's the same thing like if you quit before your bonus is paid out. You just don't get it. So if your company underperforms or they stay private and you're only getting your bonuses in stock and equity, it just shows that they don't really have a good grip on their cash. And if you are in this position, definitely make sure to understand your vesting schedule really, in detail and the company's management of cash versus equity. Okay, another red flag here. No transparency across teams. This is important mainly because if no one's talking about bonuses, it's either going to mean they're inconsistent, unfair, or rare in the sense of nobody gets them, so nobody talks about them because they're not a real thing.
Right.
Something that can help, and this is just outside of everything, but a great way to know a little bit about a company is Glassdoor. Because Glassdoor is where I would say all disgruntled employees go to air out their dirty laundry. Now, Glassdoor has some ridiculous rules, is what I learned. Okay. Glassdoor's rules for reviews are ridiculous. So Glassdoor, I'm talking to you here, fix that. They have so many rules. When I was trying to write a Glassdoor review, ChatGPT was like, it's going to get deleted. It's going to get deleted. And I was like, all right, I give up. I'm not doing it anymore. Because that's how many rules they have of like how specific you can be. And you can't call out certain people. You can't say specific things. But the people who do make it through and write this vague review will tell you a lot more about the company. Because frankly, I've seen it happen a lot. And there's some good stuff on Glassdoor. So check Glassdoor, ask around to colleagues that you trust. But at the end of the day, if no teams are talking about bonuses, that's just not a good sign. Right? Okay, another red flag is when bonuses are tied to unrealistic or vague goals. This goes back, I think, at this point, everybody should know. When things are vague in business, you need to turn your spidey senses on and start paying attention more. Because things are not left vague for no reason. All right. Things are vague either because they don't know, which is kind of not great. OK, honesty is the best policy. But also, if you have leaders in a company of 500 people that don't know big topic items like the goals of the company, ? That's not good. Right. Another reason they keep things vague is to protect themselves. All right. Think of this like, Lil T, I told you, let's record at 6. All right. Imagine if I said, let's record at 6 on the dot. I'm so specific. If I show up at 6:02, you could be like, Kiana, you suck. Right. But if I say, let's record around 6, now it's a little bit more vague. Now you're like, okay, are we doing it at 6? If I show up at 6:05, I could show up at 5:40. There's so many different ways, right? Now, I could also say, let's record this evening. Okay. Now that is maximum levels of vague. I could call you at any point in time and I could say, little T, why aren't you on the pod? Why aren't you recording? I told you we were going to record this evening.
Well, it's different between me and you because I wouldn't take you as serious because I'll be like, girl, that's on you.
Right. But as a manager, if you think of that example I just gave you, right? That is how different components of business get handled. Right. And in those really vague situations, see how easy it is for me to gaslight you? For me to manipulate the conversation to go my way? So watch your back.
Yeah, I can see it. But it's so hard for me to get in this situation like that where it'd be like...
Well, imagine that your manager...
Even with Chanel, if she was like, girl, come in at X, Y, and Z time, and then I show up at X, Y, and Z time, and she gets mad at me, I'm like, it's your fault. You can't be specific.
Fair enough. As long as you have documentation of that, right? But imagine if it was something that she said in passing in a conversation, and then it became a he said, she said, and then you get fired. Because you didn't consistently show up to work on time. That's corporate. That's why we did this pod. Right? Because that's how people will play you. So if they're saying things like hit all quarterly targets or exceed expectations, but there's no numeric numbers, there's no specifics, there's nothing tied next to it, that's a red flag. Okay, this is a big red flag, is bonuses are used to offset a low base salary. So what that means is you get paid dog shit. Pending everything works out this year, we will pay you the salary you actually deserve. But you definitely don't want to be caught in this situation. Now, I've seen this happen a lot with startups, for example, because startups don't have money. But a lot of the times what startups do is they don't give you a lot of money, but they give you equity. And then a bonus may be used to like offset somewhat of that lower salary. I think the thing is, it depends on what stage of your career you're at, because this could be a red flag in a big way, or it could be a soft yellow flag in a light way. Because if you're working for a small business that doesn't have any money, it's pretty common to see things where it's like more equity based or performance based or things like that, compensation. I see that a lot. But if you are in this situation, you need some documentation. You need to understand how that bonus is going to get determined, how you're going to get it, because if you leave it up in the air to, oh, if performance is good and things are good, then you might be like me, where it's just, for multiple years, my bonus was just fictitious numbers that some little man was just, I guess, pulling out of his brain at any point in time, right?
Right.
Okay, big red flag. Had this happen to me, seen this happen to other people at other companies, but changing bonus structures every year. Mm-hmm. If the formula or the targets are constantly changing, it's harder to plan and it's even harder to succeed. It's a red flag because it really just shows you how incompetent leadership is, right? Because although you do need to change things, yes, like you got to adapt to the market, you got to adapt to trends, all this stuff. If you're changing your bonus structure every single year, it's because your business is failing and you're trying to create ways to hide that or disguise that.
Right.
Right? Or it's just because you're really bad leadership and you don't know how to create consistency. Could be a multitude of things, but in a general sense, you don't want to see big things like that changing every year. Mm-hmm. So ask how long the current structure has been in place. Ask what happened last year, stay up to date. But, if things are changing a lot like that, then I'm sure you're at a company where you have a lot more worries than this. And there's some more red flags you should be paying attention to. So,
right.
To wrap up this bad boy of an episode, when it comes to bonuses, don't get blindsided by shiny numbers. They can be nice perks, but they're rarely guaranteed. And they often come with some form of a fine print of politics and strings attached, right? Mm-hmm. So Make sure you are comfortable with your base pay and benefits. Assume your bonus won't be there when you're negotiating those. And then that way, when you do get a bonus, you're going to see it as a true cherry on top. I think if there's one takeaway from this episode, and maybe just in general, your compensation at a company is so important to how you operate within that business. And there are a few things that just non-negotiables. Number one, understand the structure. Ask the right questions so you know how you're getting compensated, what it is that you need to do to hit those goals and those deadlines and whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And don't base your self-worth based on what a company offers you, whether it's paying out a bonus, giving you a raise, doing anything, right?
Right.
Think of it this way. Do you ever just give people money for free?
No.
No. You don't just walk around handing out hundos for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Right? A company isn't going to do that either.
Right.
They're not going to walk around and hand out bonuses, hand out raises, they're not going to just give you everything you could ever want without you advocating for yourself and saying you want it.
Right.
So stay sharp, stay curious, and remember, all rules have manipulations and workarounds. So if you aren't getting a bonus, maybe there's something else your company can do to reward you for your hard work, right? Maybe you super performed and they'll let you go to a conference next year, or you can take a trip with your team, or you can go to the offsite. I don't know. But remember, there's other ways you can get compensated. So if you found today's episode helpful at all, don't forget to subscribe, rate, review, and share it with your coworkers. If you've got a wild story about a sketchy bonus situation, or maybe you need some advice on renegotiating terms of your bonus, send it in. Hit up our website, howtosurviveyourboss.com. Maybe we'll feature it in a future episode, or maybe it'll be on our website with some advice next to it. Until next time, keep your receipts, trust your guts, and never let a corporation gaslight you into playing small. Peace and love.